Welcome, everybody. I'm delighted to welcome you all here. I'm Lynne Mulholland, the Associate Governor of the FCC. Thank you all for joining us. We are so...
This is a good crowd. I can tell already.
We are so delighted to have Eleanor McEvoy here. She's an absolute legend in Ireland. And a very busy week here in Hong Kong. You performed at the Ball on Saturday night, which was tremendous, and you have a concert Friday night. If anybody hasn't got tickets yet, there are still some available for that. And you're doing a bunch of workshops throughout the year, but we are very happy to have you here at the FCC. So what we're going to do is have a chat, and Eleanor is going to maybe pick up on a couple of things that I talk about and just decide when she wants to sing throughout. So
Pretty much, yeah. Keep it loose.
So, Eleanor, you started in music very early, at a very young age, at age 4. Can you tell us about how you got into music? And, you didn't want to be a singer at first, is that right?
Yeah, I grew up in a very musical household. And there was, we'd lots of musical instruments around the house. There was a piano, there was guitars, and it was slightly, we might have run out of furniture, but there was never any shortage of musical instruments. But it was a slightly odd kind of upbringing because on one hand it was kind of somewhat bohemian. My dad was an artist and a painter, but he was also very, very, very religious, and very into the Latin Mass and all of. He had been a Cistercian monk in his life. So there was this weird... very, very, very strong doctrine Catholic thing, and then the weird bohemian thing going on at the same time. But yeah, music was a big part of our lives. And when I was very small, my sister went to get lessons, piano lessons, from a local woman around the corner. And the idea was they'd pay for my sister to get lessons, and then she'd come back and teach me what she learned so that they wouldn't have to pay for two of us. And then I did a little exam, and the examiner asked to see me and asked to see my mum afterwards, and said, look, this child has very good ear, maybe you could get her a violin. I don't know why she thought the violin. I mean, I wanted to play the saxophone, actually. But anyway, so gradually a violin was got for me, and it was the wrong size. So it was quite a bit later that I started formal lessons. But in the meanwhile, I was into pop songs, pop radio, singing, with my sister, my older sister Marion, and my older brother, and we had a little band that we used to sing in, together. So that was kind of how it started.
And that strict childhood, what impact did that have on your creativity in general?
Wow. I think it profoundly affected my creativity. I mean, I suppose in some way it kind of drove it, because my dad was very, I wasn't allowed to have friends growing up. It was pretty dreadful, to be honest. So he believed that suffering gets you to heaven quicker, and that friends interfere with your relationship with God, and so there was a lot of that kind of nonsense going on. So in the absence of kind of friends, I think I really escaped through my music. I would kind of go into the sitting room and I'd start playing piano. So at a very, very, very young age, I was writing songs. And I think I found it quite cathartic, and it really helped me, I think. Still helps me. It's cheaper than therapy. So yeah, but it's funny. I keep thinking, no, it hasn't affected my writing at all. It hasn't affected. And then every song I look at the lyrics, and religion is in there somewhere. You think you can get it out of yourself, you really can't. I mean, it's like it or not.
And did you rebel then as a teenager?
Oh yeah. Yeah, rebelled big time. And that was quite challenging as well. And then it was odd because I grew up in a little parish in Cabra on the north side of Dublin, the parish of Christ the King. And, we had a lot of issues at home with clerical sex abuse of, children. And sadly, my parish, the Christ the King, was one of the first ones. I was in the folk group, and it was run by a priest, Father Ivan Payne. And one of my friends in the folk group was a guy called Andrew Madden, who wrote the book Altar Boy, he was actually the first person to speak out about clerical abuse in the Catholic Church, and he was vilified, he was spat at, he was shunned, completely shunned, but he was speaking the truth. And then when the bishops paid him off and he said that they had paid him, the bishops denied it. And yeah, so I mean, we all know the history, but it was hard seeing it and being around it, and had mixed emotions. Like even my parents, even though they were ridiculously religious, and and I had very difficult relationships with both of them, it was still hard to see, my mother, who gave everything up for the church, everything was around the church, and for my parents then to see this had gone on when you've given your whole life to it. So, I wrote a little bit about that in a couple of songs, so it was very hard, very, very mixed emotions.
And when did you decide to go to New York? And I believe you spent a bit of time busking on the streets of New York. Can you talk about that?
Sure. So I basically, in school, I realized I kind of have to, they liked me doing music, my parents, but they weren't crazy about the idea of me making a living out of music, because they didn't think that was kind of practical. So I thought, if I do music in college, I'll keep them happy. And they thought, yeah, well, maybe she could teach afterwards. So I did music in college. And then during the last summer, I went to New York, and I brought, my couple of instruments with me, and I started busking. I went in to get a job, actually. I was staying in Brooklyn, and I went in to get a job, and I only had $1.50 for the subway token in, and I realized I didn't have the money to get back from Manhattan. So I brought the violin with me and thought, well, I can go busking and I'll make something. I'll make $1.50 anyway to get back. So I got the fiddle out and I started playing, and the money started coming in, and I thought, okay, I don't need a job, I just need to busk. But it was years ago, before Giuliani and all that. So you see these films, with Glenn Hansard, and it looks so romantic, and they're busking, and and it wasn't like that at all. There was guys trying to rob me and trying to steal my money and trying to convert me to this, that, and the other. And obviously I hate vigilante groups, and I'm not advocating vigilanteism, but there was a group called the Guardian Angels with red berets and white T-shirts, and, they'd come round and kind of check in on me, and then there was the cops on the horsebacks, and they got to know me too, and they'd say, "You okay today, ma'am? Is anybody bothering you?" And I'd say, "No, I'm okay today, officer." So, it was hard. I wouldn't want to be back doing it again.
Do you still give money to buskers now?
Yeah, all the time. It costs me a fortune in going down Grafton Street in Dublin. I nearly have to detour because I just have to give them all money. So.
And you spent a bit of time in a symphony orchestra. How did that influence your work?
Because after I decided the busking wasn't for me, I came back to Ireland, and during college, I was getting work in pit orchestras. I was a fairly good sight reader, and I was playing violin kind of reasonably well at this time. And I thought, well, maybe if I practice, I can get into the symphony orchestra. So I auditioned for the National Symphony Orchestra, and I got in. And I had a plan. If I didn't get there, I was going to go to BBC Wales, because that was kind of and then Bournemouth Symphony Orchestra and Liverpool Phil. And I had a list that I was going to go through. But I got into the symphony orchestra at home. And that was great, because you had a salary every week, and I had a little tiny bedsit, a very small flat in Dublin. So I was earning money. I was working as a session musician as well. And that time in Dublin, we had a lot of foreign bands coming to record in Ireland. So there was really good money to be made. And then you'd U2 and Sinead O'Connor, all these people I played with at the time, because, you could get a load of money. So it also let me kind of establish my own career, because all I really wanted to do was write songs. That was, I'd be there moonlighting, and I was in the orchestra, and then I'd always have a band that I was playing with later on, and I'd have the leopard skin leggings on underneath the ball gown that you had to wear on stage, and as soon as I got off stage, I'd be taking the dress off and running down to one of the clubs in town to kind of play violin in some dodgy band. So it was very enjoyable, very hectic, as well. I was young, but it exposed me to a lot of different types of music, and I loved classical music, but all I really wanted to do was write songs. So I'd like hundreds of songs written at this point. I hadn't played any for anybody really, so I gradually thought, actually, I'll tell you what happened. I went into work one day, and I was kind of towards the back of the second violins, and there was a man who had led the orchestra, a man called Arthur Knockstern, and he'd come, I think, from Odessa, and gradually he had been moved back as he got older. And I went into work one day, and he was beside me, the young one at the back, and I thought, oh my God, every other job you do, as you progress, you get moved up and you get promoted, and as your fingers go as a violinist, you get moved back. So now this guy who was so amazing is sitting beside me, God love him. And in that moment I said, I'm going to give this singer-songwriter thing a shot. I'm going to try and get a publishing deal. And I thought if it all fails and goes horribly wrong, maybe I can audition again and get into the orchestra again. So that day I went to the manager and I said, I was on month-to-month contract. So I said, look, I won't be in after whatever month it was. Yeah.
And speaking of older people and sad things, I did hear a funny story that you used to drive around Ireland in a hearse. Is that true?
And England, yeah.
So a funeral car?
Okay, so I had a boyfriend at the time, my partner for a long time, who, to say it mildly, was a bit eccentric. And I drove a van, and he came home one day and said, I've something to show you. It's outside. I'm after buying something. And I'm thinking, oh, God, what's he after buying? And I was thinking a plant or something, a giant plant. And I go out, and there's a hearse sitting outside the door. And he said, I got a car. And I said, it's a hearse. And he said, no, it's a black car. And I went, no, that's a hearse. And he said, no, it's a black car. And with that, one of my neighbors came out and blessed himself. And he said, like, oh, my God, is Mr. O'Shea in number 6 gone, and I looked at him, and he said, okay, it's a hearse. And then, I was a little put out by it, to be honest, but in my head, I thought, okay, well, look, it could be, he could be on drugs, he could be having affairs. Well, as it turned out, he was. But anyway, that's a whole other album. But at the time, I thought, okay, he bought a hearse, get over it, pick your battles. And then one day my van broke down and he said, well, take the hearse. And I went, okay. So I got into the hearse. And they're quite wide because, so the keyboard went in kind of widthways. And then I didn't know this, but to travel at really low speeds, you have to have quite a big engine. So it was like, wow, this is cool. So I kept the hearse after that and I toured in a hearse. Yeah.
Must have been handy for parking.
It was hard to park because it was so big. But yeah, in towns in Ireland, people would bless themselves when you drove by. And they'd also let you out into the traffic because, when funerals at home are a big, they have to be given precedence. So it was great.
I heard another story, actually. This was from someone in the Irish community on Saturday night who said that they had heard you play at Glastonbury in 1994. And you had been part of a band whose kit got stolen. And this was before your big hits, obviously, but he was in the crowd and you got up on stage, you picked up a guitar or violin and sang a song in 4 different languages. Is there any truth to this story?
It's funny, I remember it so vividly because we had a van with all the gear in and everything was taken from the van the night before, and we had to go straight onto the boat like 6 o'clock the next morning, and I had no gear, so I was making phone calls, and I was struck then, as I have been so often in my life, at the kindness of strangers. The kindness of strangers as I travel around the world. I meet people from different cultures, different languages, and whilst there can be that initial thing, it is what is inside your heart that counts, and you learn that pretty quickly, that it's what's inside people's heart that counts. Actually, I might sing the Spanish word for heart. Is that okay? Yeah, okay.
That's perfect.
I actually have a song about this, so yeah. So do I need to switch this on or something? It's got this one here. 1, 2, 2. Is that okay? Yeah, okay. So this is about, kind of about what I'm just talking about. It's called the Spanish word for heart is corazón. And I don't speak 4 languages. I speak Irish and English and a little bit of French. But I have Pidgin. I'm trying to learn Pidgin languages. Cantonese is hard, can I say? It's really hard. And the tones that you need to say things. Tough. Okay. Sorry. Be better if it's in tune. Okay. Is that across with the guitar on? Well, the Spanish word for heart is corazón. It's there in every second Spanish song. I have come to learn its meaning, but I might pronounce it wrong. The Spanish word for heart is corazón. Now the Germans say das Herz und die Liebe. The French say cœur, the Irish say mochrie. Don't know what they say in Denmark, 'cause I couldn't stay that long. But the Spanish word for heart is corazón. Oh, but there are those who don't know what it means. They will wear you down and trample on your dreams. They might speak a little Spanish, but it's not their mother tongue, 'cause the Spanish word for heart is corazón. Now, I never really learned that much in school. I was too busy playing guitar and playing the fool. There was no teacher that could teach me what I had to learn alone, like the Spanish word for heart is corazón. But I've learned that life is richer when it's shared. So while there's wine to drink and music to be heard, I will raise my glass to all the hearts that I depend upon. Now the Spanish word for that is corazón. En español decimos corazón. En las vuestra poesía y canción. Tal vez esta palabra no necesita traducción. En español decimos corazón. Oh, the Spanish word for heart is corazón. It's there in every second Spanish song. I have come to learn its meaning. Why did it take so long? The Spanish word for heart is corazón. Yes, the Spanish word for heart is corazón. Thank you.
Absolutely beautiful, and it does sound like you can sing in 4 different languages, so I'll question you there. So I can see some Irish, I see a lot of green and some Irish hats over there in the corner. I think, you know, Ireland has a long legacy of poets, artists, and musicians. What do you think, in your experience, is it about Ireland that resonates so deeply with audiences around the world?
It's a really good question, Lynne. The answer is I don't know. I can hazard some guess. I mean, I think there's a couple of things. I think, and I can find this annoying, there's a kind of a disregard for authority in Ireland, which in one way is kind of brilliant and in another way is kind of infuriating. I think we carry that. We have a word in Ireland, crack, you know, which means fun. It doesn't quite mean fun. It's a word that's kind of hard to quantify. But we have that. I think sometimes as well that by virtue of the fact that we're in Ireland, an island, and that it rains a lot, I think that does help creativity a little bit. And I think that some of our melodies, I think that the kind of Celtic melodies you get lend themselves well towards popular culture. Like there's bands around the world, REM, or these major pop bands who are brilliant, but their melodies are not the same. Like you get people like U2 or Anya or Sinead O'Connor or and Van Morrison, a prime example. Like you take a song like Moonlight, it's a marvelous night for a moon dance with the stars up above in your eyes. You know that song? It's basically an Irish jig. And you can take the Cranberries or a whole lot of bands and sing them like that, and they work as kind of Irish tunes. You don't really get that with acts. So I think some of it is that. Of course, some of it is the fact that we are fortunate to have English as our main language, so we have that immediate advantage. But after that, I don't know. It's you guys as journalists might be in a better position to to discover that.
Well, speaking of journalists, we're here at the FCC. Many people in the audience are journalists. I think we both share a desire to document the truth. You've said you try never to edit out the truth and the raw emotion in your music. You also wrote a song for Veronica Guerin, who was murdered in 1996, called Easy to Lose Hope. Now, I know you can't sing that song tonight, but do you see a parallel between journalism and songwriting in terms of what moves people and makes them sit up and take notice?
Such a great question. I do and I don't. I think sometimes that you guys have to be subjective. You've got to see both sides. You have to you have to be fair and balanced. I don't. It's kind of my job to be subjective. You know, it's my job to give a passionate view, you know, that is purely subjective and maybe selfish and maybe pathetic sometimes. I guess my challenge is to try and remove the filter, to try and speak the truth no matter what. And I think we have that in common. You guys have to tell the truth, and I try to tell my subjective truth, even if I'm wrong. Whereas you guys kind of have to be right, or try and be right. But when Veronica Guerin was killed, it had a really profound effect on me, because we had these drug gangs that were fighting at home, and you know, we thought it was terrible. But and they were shooting each other. But I thought, my God, when they're shooting journalists, because we rely on you guys, we rely on you to keep us straight, to hold people to account, to hold us to account. And, you know, I think that's so valuable in our society, maybe now more than ever. And it's one of the things I'm finding with, you know, with you know, social media, you know, that all our work is being devalued. My work is being devalued, your work is being devalued. And I'm noticing that journalists are being paid less and less, but news costs money. Investigation, and it costs money. And we need that, we need it. So, yeah, it's worrying times for all of us, and I guess we just have to all try our best to keep telling the truth as we see it. You know, it's not easy to tell the truth all the time.
Is there a space for music at the moment? I mean, this is terribly troubled times. I mean, what is the role of music right now when things are a little bit, the world is just falling apart? Where do you see music playing a role in that?
I think there's always, I think that if you're an artist, I think, you know, I never wanted to write a political song. I never wanted to write a song about, you know, Veronica Guerin. I never wanted to write songs about any of these things, but you can't help yourself. You get so incensed by something that you're so compelled. And sometimes I'll write a song and I think, well, I'll never sing that song for anybody. I'm just writing this to get it out of my system so that I can write the next song that I will actually sing to people. So yeah, I think at the moment we all have a really big role to play. I mean, at the moment I'm finding one of the roles that I think I have, and I kind of decided on this during COVID, when I was looking around at, like, my friend who's a doctor, you know, and I see what she's given to society, and I was thinking, what the hell are you adding to society, Eleanor? And I really had to think about it, and I thought, okay, I think I can heal hearts and minds a little bit. And, you know, at a time when people are struggling, I think that music has the ability. I'm a big believer in the healing power of music. I really am. I think that if you're down or you're depressed, music, I wish you could go to your doctor and he'd give you a prescription, or she'd give you a prescription and say, listen to that Leonard Cohen track and that Bruce Springsteen track, and listen to the Bach cantatas twice a day, and come back to me next week and tell me how you're feeling. You know, I mean, you know, people laugh, but you know, you look at the brain chemistry, and music is a really, really powerful, mood-altering substance. So now at my concerts, I make a decision to send people home uplifted. Now, that doesn't mean I won't deal with a dark subject over the course of the night. But, you know, we talk a lot now about mindfulness and the ability to feel an emotion. Music does that. You know, sometimes if I'm playing, like, say, at a funeral or something, and the people think they're not allowed to grieve, you play a piece of music, it comes out. But better out than in, right? Because it'll come out at some stage, and it might be more socially unacceptable, or might come out in your workplace, you know. So it's going to come out, better let it out with music in a safe kind of healing way. And if by the end of the concert people are not uplifted, I've failed. I feel myself I've failed. So I try and shape the evening so that they go home uplifted. Yeah.
Your music does tackle some real-world issues. So your 1999 song Sophie dealt with anorexia and has since become a hit that's used in treatment centers, actually, in eating disorder clinics around the world. You've also played in prisons to captive audiences. So, you know, how important is it that your music plays a therapeutic or social purpose?
Yeah, the prison thing was interesting. It wasn't great. I wouldn't be repeating it. But yeah, Sophie. I mean, I guess because healing has played such an important role in my life. Music. So much music has often healed me. Other people's music. So I was delighted. And like Sophie was a song. It was one of those songs I write thinking I'll never, play this to anybody. But I had two people I knew who had anorexia. One of them died, sadly, one of them survived. And for the purposes of the song, I put it into one person. And I was really struck by how it affected the family of the person. It didn't just affect them. Their brother was profoundly affected. The sister was profoundly affected. Both of the parents, oh my God, went through hell. So I wanted to write it from those two perspectives. And the funny thing was, she wasn't trying to be special, or she just wanted to be like all the other girls. She just wanted to be like everybody else. So I wrote it thinking I'll never play it for anybody, but the producer, Rupert Hine, of my third album, heard it and said, I really want to put this on the album. And I said, Columbia Records in New York are not going to want a song about anorexia on the album. And he said, no, but we'll put it later on in the album. They won't notice, big record companies, He was dead right. So we did yeah. And for years, like, nobody kind of said anything to me about it. I suppose 5 or 6 years later, I found a lot of girls coming to the gig with the lyrics, asking me to sign the lyrics. And I thought, what the hell is, and I discovered then that it had a whole other world, Yeah.
So there was a comment made about your songwriting that you're supposed to write songs that sell albums, but actually you're writing songs that sell alcohol.
Yeah. Yeah, it was a very big, successful American songwriter who said it to me. He said, Eleanor, you're supposed to be writing songs that's going to sell albums, but you, sweetheart, you're writing songs that's going to sell alcohol. And I think there's an element of truth in that for sure, yeah. But hey, living up to my national stereotype.
And one that made everybody in Ireland roar with laughter of the title album, Gimme Some Wine.
Yeah. So Gimme Some Wine was actually a song that was written about a painting. So I had co-written a song called Dreaming of Leaving with Lloyd Cole, a wonderful British songwriter. And Lloyd and myself wrote this song, Dreaming of Leaving. And I then hooked up with a guy called Chris Gollin, who was an artist. I loved his stuff. And he really liked my stuff. And he came to one of my concerts and he said, let's collaborate. And I thought, well, I'd love to collaborate, but you paint and I sing. So exactly how is this going to work? And he said, well, why don't I paint, the cover of the next album? And why don't I listen to the album and I'll do some paintings on the themes. So he did this beautiful painting on he did 22 paintings actually, but one of them was on this song that I'd written with Lloyd. And I thought, okay, it was this girl and there was a playing card on the table and there was just so many questions. You just wanted to find out more about this girl in the painting. And we did it, there was a big exhibition in this beautiful gallery in Fitzrovia, a real posh part of London, and we were there. And I was going to sing the songs in front of the paintings. And while I was there, I was looking at this bloke who was walking around the gallery, and he was very stressed, kind of London businessman, and he wasn't looking at any of the paintings. And I thought, oh my God, darling, you need to look at art more than anybody that I've seen in a long time, And I wrote the song from the perspective of the girl in the painting saying, look at me. If you look at me, I will bring you places that you've never been to in life before, but you have to, and you need me, kind of. So that was the song. Will I sing it? Give me some wine.
Please.
Is the guitar on the speaker? I don't think it is it? Okay. Yeah, okay. Is it loud enough? Yeah? Okay. I haven't done this one in a while, so... Life's as random as a deck of cards. Here I am betting my heart. I've wagered it for worse odds, all the same. I was drawn into this world, a fragment of a girl, with nothing but a sad song to my name. Give me some wine, give me some wine. If I can't get your time, give me some wine. Getting some wine's gonna have to do for now. Give me some wine, give me some wine. If I can't get your time, give me some wine. Getting some wine's gonna have to do. Well, my hands are tired and scarred, but they've carried me this far. So if they show my age, that's okay by me. Growing old's not such a curse. The alternatives are worse. So I'll show my hands however they may be. Give me some wine, give me some wine. If I can't get your time, give me some wine. Getting some wine's gonna have to do for now. Give me some wine, give me some wine. If I can't get your time, give me some wine. Getting some wine's gonna have to do. Give me some wine, give me some wine. If I can't get your time, give me some wine. Getting some wine's gonna have to do.
Love it. So during COVID, which was when that song particularly resonated with a lot of us, I think, you actually did a lot of work to help artists who were navigating uncertainty and mental health struggles. You set up an organization or a group called Minding Creative Minds.
Yeah, I didn't actually set it up. I helped them get the funding. Yeah, so basically, I am the chairman of the board of IMRO, the Irish Music Rights Organisation, which is, I think here in your version here is CASH, C-A-S-H, and in Britain it's PRS, and Germany it's GEMA, BMI or ASCAP in the United States. So in IMRO during COVID, I was obviously very worried about people who I think music is important for the rest of society, but it's important to us too. And a lot of us, if we're not doing it, we kind of don't know what to do with ourselves. So I was worried about the mental health of our members or our songwriters. So there was a guy, a fantastic guy, who I can't remember his name, which is dreadful. I'm sorry, but he wanted to set up this thing. So it was basically free mental health counselling services for musicians. And songwriters and anybody connected with the music industry, and then it was extended out to the theatre and to crew, anybody working in theatres, production, whatever, DJs who were just all of a sudden out of work, and they could talk to counsellors any hour of the day or night, 365 days a year. So it was really helpful, and I think it probably saved lives. I've been told that, but it wasn't me though. I helped organize it, but
and you helped promote it. I mean, I think what you said at that time was that music plays such a role in being therapeutic for people listening to it when everybody was isolated or in lockdown. But what about the artists? They're actually in need of help too. And I think with journalism, often
100%,
people forget that the journalists are the ones telling the stories. They're on the front line. They are the first to respond in disasters like. We had here a very sad occasion last year, and the journalists are the ones reporting that first. So just remembering the people who are giving comfort to others and sharing the news with others.
And really hard when you guys can't let out your emotions. You're probably seeing very difficult things, and you have to keep yourself in check so that the rest of us can get the news, that we need. But yeah, you have to look after your own minds, don't you? Yeah.
What did that period teach you about the value of art and community radio? So at that time, I think radio had a resurgence in Ireland because people who hadn't checked in for a while were once again tuning into their local radio stations. And do you think that mainstream media will always be important for musicians now after that?
I hope so. I think that, we'd maybe kind of downgrade. I mean, I love radio as a medium. I have to say it's one of my favorite mediums, much more so than television. But I think we had downgraded it, radio a little bit in our society, and my God, it came back with a vengeance because, not only did it educate us about what was happening, but it also entertained us and brought people together in a way that was really important in our society at the time, because particularly the elderly, I don't know what the law was here, but in Ireland we had cocooning, where if you were over 70 you weren't allowed out, which seems bizarre now, but I think radio was a lifeline for a lot of people, and it also created that, those kind of the jukebox moments, the national jukebox, where everybody was experiencing that at the same time, and shared experiences. I mean, what's life about but shared experience?
Absolutely. And Eleanor has been on RTHK actually this past weekend, and you can listen to the podcast if anyone missed it.
And I'm on again, actually, I think tomorrow or next day, or I can't remember. 18th. Thank you, Mark.
Thank you. Thank you, Mark. The media industry is also hearing all about how artificial intelligence is going to take over all of our jobs, write our articles. Are musicians facing that same fear, and songwriters in particular? How are you dealing with that?
It's really hard to know. I mean, creators, it's in our DNA to embrace technology. We're not anti-technology. When I was lobbying in Europe for the copyright directive in Brussels and in Strasbourg, the multinational tech companies were saying, oh, you guys are against innovation. No. Innovation is in our DNA. Creativity is in our DNA. We want to embrace technology, but creators must be paid. Creators must be paid. Same with you guys. Copyright directive, in European copyright directive, I don't know how much that made the news over here, but there was Article 17, 21, 22, which was very relevant to us. But Article 15 was about journalism. It was about the multinational tech companies using your copyright and not paying you for it. So Article 15 was all about you getting paid for that. And if you don't get paid for what you do, what you do gets devalued and you can't do it anymore because you're not paid for it. So I think the same is true of AI. And I think, there's a lot of things talked about with AI, but one of the things that is not talked about enough is the kind of feedback loop that we will have less diversity, more stereotypes. As the AI loop continues, you'll have more misogyny, more like you put in, woman into AI and you get this like size 0 model, you put in boss, you get a white CEO guy in a suit, so it's dangerous from a diversity point of view. So my feeling would be, and I'm not speaking in my role just as an artist, is let's embrace it. But let's pay people for the use of their work. Like sampling. They said years ago, rap artists sampling, people sampling songs, but they're stealing people's works and it's not original. Bach stole, Beethoven stole, all the great composers stole. Use the sample and pay it. Pay a very small percentage of the royalty to the person whose sample you used. We figured it out. We figured out how to monetize it. I'd like to think we'll figure this out too. But we need people to obey the law. And the problem is that the power of the multinational tech companies, when we were lobbying in Europe, the Googles of the world had 100 times our resources, I was meeting with one of our MEPs and, the assistant came down to meet us and he had a TikTok notebook and a Google pen and, and I was kind of looking at him going, these guys are in a lot. And he said, oh, every day. And I thought, okay, this is what we're up against.
Did you have a story at the beginning of your career where someone gave you advice to keep the territory of Ireland to yourself?
Yes,
Can you tell us?
You've done your research, girl.
I used to be a journalist.
Okay, so I only ever wanted to write songs. That's all I wanted to do. I didn't want to sing. I didn't want to tour. I just wanted to write songs. But I couldn't get a publishing deal. And I sent my songs out to all the publishing companies in Ireland. None of them had signed me. So somebody said, you're going to have to sing them yourself and then people will get to know them. So I said, okay. So I sang the songs then myself. And then with my little band, I started getting a bit of interest. And one night I was playing in a club in Dublin, and I had Sony Ireland and, you know, Warner Brothers, Warner Chappell Ireland, and all the Irish companies there. And but lo and behold, a guy rocked up from David Geffen's label in the United States in Los Angeles. David Geffen had a very successful, one of the most successful ones of the world at the time, called Geffen Records, very small label. They had like Nirvana, Joni Mitchell, Neil Young, Aerosmith, Guns N' Roses. So a lot of, you know, big acts, but only a small number. And he saw me play on a Monday night in a club called the Bagot Inn. And he came up to me afterwards and he said, I want to sign you on a worldwide deal to Geffen Records. And I thought he had come in off the streets. He looked very scruffy, and luckily I was very polite to him. And I said, you sit down there, and it was somebody's birthday, so I had a birthday cake, and I was giving them, and I said, do you want a piece of cake? And I gave him a piece of cake, and I said, I've got to go over and talk to these men over there, but you sit down there, I'll be back to you. And one of the guys I was going over to talk to was a man called John Sheehan, who was the head of Sony Music Ireland. And he turned around to me and he said, Eleanor, and I'm always grateful to him for saying this, he said, he's quite an important guy, you might want to go talk to him. And I said, really? And I looked over and I said, who's the guy with him in the suit? And he said, that's his driver. And I thought, okay. So I met him the following day in the presidential suite of the Conrad Hotel, 12 o'clock, and he'd listened to my demos, and yeah. So he signed me to Geffen Records. Having failed to get a publishing deal, I had formed my own little publishing company, Blue Dandelion Publishing. And this meant that I now had a major record deal and I owned my publishing, which was a really, really strong position to be in. So I then got a publishing deal with EMI New York. So that really was a fortunate thing. But I had a lovely man in Ireland who was a music lawyer, and he said, Eleanor, let's just try something. When you're signing this big deal with Geffen Records and the big deal with EMI, we're going to ask them, can we keep the territory of Ireland? And I went in and I said, okay, well, let's ask for it. So we asked for this, and you could see these guys in their skyscrapers looking at me going, they were nearly going, what's the population of Ireland? And somebody said, I don't know, 3-4 million. And they go, of course you can keep your territory for yourself, you know? So to this day, I own all my own master rights and my publishing rights in Ireland, in the territory of Ireland. And, you know, it's a small thing, but, you know, I was kind of popular in Ireland, so I earned a few quid from it, you know. It was really worthwhile doing it, yeah.
Kind of popular in Ireland. You did have the biggest selling Irish album of all time. Which we will talk about soon, and I will open up to the floor to ask questions as well before we sing that particular famous song. But before we go on to that, just talking about the Irish territory and close to Ireland, what I love about your songs is that they might be Irish themed, but they have universal appeal. So my favorite song of yours is actually South Ann Street. And I was telling this to Eleanor at the ball on Saturday. I love South Ann Street. And she said, you must have an ex. Well, anyone who hears this song, I think, will understand why it has an appeal. And I think most people in the room will understand. It's absolutely beautiful. Can you tell me about the story behind this song? And you might treat us with a...
Yeah, I mean, there's a tiny little street in Dublin called South Ann Street. It's off like Grafton Street, which is like one of the main shopping streets. So I was walking down South Ann Street coming up to Christmas there, I think the year before COVID. And I'm walking and I look and I see, oh my God, my ex-boyfriend from college from like over 30 years ago. And it was kind of a shock. We met and we, you know, basically we ended up going to the pub and we drank for a few hours and then we said goodbye. That's all that happened. And feeble-minded as I am, no, seriously. Not having any imagination at all, I called the song South Ann Street. So will I just sing it? Will I? Okay. Sorry, it's a tune for it, sorry.
This one we have to have the speaker for.
I think that people think a lot that in songwriting that you have to be universal to appeal to everybody, but I believe the opposite. I think if you're very specific to your own experience and you just tell the truth, that people will recognize that, you know, because we're kind of all the same. I tell you one thing I've learned since I wrote this song, everybody has an ex they're thinking about it. And if you're thinking, oh, I do, but my wife doesn't, let me tell you, the messages I get. Seriously. And I don't know, I think Irish people in particular, certainly all Irish men have the one that got away. You know, they all have one of those. Anyway, okay. Okay, so South Ann Street. Is it on there yet? Okay. Well, I almost didn't know him. We nearly passed him by. It took us both a moment to get over our surprise. Then we hugged each other clumsily and laughed a bit too long as the shoppers on South Ann Street hurried on. I said I'd heard that he was married and living overseas. He said he'd seen my posters on a billboard near his street, and he'd heard about what happened, and we both just looked away and headed from South Ann Street to McDade's, where we drank to ancient love for hours on end, raised our glasses to remember absent friends. We drank to chance encounters too long overdue on South Ann Street on a Tuesday afternoon. Felt just like it used to, like we'd never been apart, like back when we were students on a bench in College Park. And I felt something deep inside of me I really can't explain, in a pub beside South Ann Street in the rain, where we drank to ancient love for hours on end, raised our glasses to remember absent friends. And we drank to chance encounters too long overdue on South Ann Street on a Tuesday afternoon. We embraced before we parted to walk into the night with a complicated sadness at this complicated life. Oh, where ships passing in the night occasionally meet at the corner of South Ann and Grafton Street, where we drank to ancient love for hours on end and raised our glasses to remember absent friends. And we drank to chance encounters too long overdue on South Ann Street on a Tuesday afternoon. Yes, we drank to ancient love for hours on end. We raised our glasses to remember absent friends. Oh, and sometimes if I'm lonely and I'm walking on my own, I'll detour down South Ann Street going home.
Absolutely gorgeous. And I believe that's also known as the Christmas song. It doesn't mention Christmas, but it makes people think of walking down Grafton Street during Christmas.
Well, you know, this is the power of melody and music. And honestly, I don't understand this, but this happened at Christmas when I met him, okay? But I didn't want to mention Christmas in the song because I didn't want to write a Christmas song, because Christmas songs don't really get played much because the Christmas catalogue is so huge. So I thought didn't want it to be a once a year thing. I'll just write it. So I didn't mention Christmas once, I didn't mention sleigh bells, didn't mention carol singers or snow or anything, right? But I recorded it, and the engineer kept saying to me, okay, give this one, and then we do the Christmas song. And I'd say, there is no Christmas song. And he'd say, oh, sorry, South Ann Street. And I went, okay. And he kept referring to it as a Christmas song. And after I had it recorded, you know, you send your songs to different territories so that they can pick the single for that territory. And people, no matter what the country was, Australia, Germany, America, kept coming back to me and saying, so maybe the second single could be the Christmas one, or the third single could be the Christmas song. And I'd say, there's no Christmas song. Isn't it weird that somehow through osmosis, or that I conveyed something in the music that was about Christmas? Now, I actually gave up after an Irish radio show I did. Everybody rang up and said, she should make that a Christmas song. So I actually went back into the studio and I did a Christmas mix with bells of St. Patrick's Cathedral and stuff, and I did a more Christmassy version of it. But isn't music weird? Isn't it weird that you can convey something? You know, it's funny, maybe it's being in a pub, and I got a lot of Germans, when I toured it in Germany, they said, I'm liking this song very much, yeah. Even though it is not making sense to me. And I was saying, well, how do you mean it's not making sense? And they were saying things like, well, it is a Tuesday afternoon and they are in the pub. Why is they not at work?
You ever met an Irish person?
Yeah, well, you guys get it the right. Yeah.
So, I mean, you were a working mum, writing when your daughter was in school or in bed, and you've even said that you wrote on airplanes.
Airplanes are great because there's no music playing, and you couldn't be disturbed by phone calls or anything. So yeah.
And you don't use an instrument whenever you're writing. You just have.
No, I
Can
mean,
you talk us through your working process and what comes first, the music or the lyrics? How do you work on an airplane?
To be honest, Lynne, every song is different, but in general, most people write music first and then they write the lyrics to the music. I mean, there's exceptions, but that's generally what they do. I mean, Elton John, Bernie Taupin, they write in two different rooms. Bernie Taupin writes all the lyrics first, then Elton John puts the music to it. Every artist is different. But for me, I used to write on piano, but because I've been playing piano since I was young, I would go through the same shapes if there's any piano players in the room, like, A flat, B flat, C minor, And I would think, why am I letting my fingers dictate to my heart and my brain where this song should go? So I stopped writing on piano and I started playing on guitar then. And then I found I was falling into the same old grooves. So I said, okay, no guitar, no instrument, just a piece of paper. So now when I write for myself, that's what I do. But obviously when I'm co-writing, you have another artist or writer in the room, and I pick up an instrument then, and we, jam or to demonstrate something to them. So I love every way of doing it. I'm mostly writing my own, but the guy I collaborate with most, co-writer, is a guy called Dave Rotheray from the band The Beautiful South. He wrote all the songs for The Beautiful South, big, very successful British band. And unusually enough, Dave writes all the lyrics, and he sends the lyrics to me completed, and I do all the music. Now, sometimes he'll, maybe alter a melody line and I'll alter a line of his. Although, to be honest, he's such a great lyric writer. I get the lyrics from him, and the song writes itself. It's extraordinary. Somebody who's really great at lyrics. So every way is different,
So let's go back in time to 1992, which was your biggest ever hit, A Woman's Heart. It stayed at #1 for 9 weeks and actually stayed in the charts, I think, for years after that. At that time, the Irish music scene was very heavily male-focused. This was the first album from an all-female ensemble. That is a song that's just truly timeless. I mean, I think I was 16 or 17. You were 26-ish when you wrote it. Did you know then that it was going to be a big hit? Can you tell us about that process?
I mean, I wrote it in my little bedsit in Rathmines. And no, I mean, it was one of those songs I wrote never to, it has no rhymes for a start. There's very few songs that have been hit songs that have no rhymes. I can probably name, Tracy Chapman, Fast Car, America, Paul Simon. I can name I need to get out more. I'm a bit of an anorak. So, you'd never write a song that didn't rhyme and wanted to be a hit. You'd never write a song called Only a Woman's Heart that seems to alienate 50% of the population. This is not how you write a hit song, okay? But I wrote it just for myself. And then ended up playing it the odd time if I was short of a song. But during this time, I was also a session musician, and I was playing in the band of a woman called Mary Black, and that was one of my regular gigs. And I played keyboards and violin and backing vocals with Mary. And one night, Mary came just socially to one of my own gigs, and she heard the song A Woman's Heart, and she was with her husband, and her husband was the record company. And he called me up the next day and said, Eleanor, I have an idea for an album just of Irish women. Now, this was kind of revolutionary at the time. I mean, this was a different time back then. And he said, I think that A Woman's Heart would make a great title track for the album. And he said, the only thing is, not many people have heard of you outside of Dublin, because I had a following in Dublin, but nowhere else at that time. And he said, how would you feel about Mary duetting with you on it? Now, I got on great with Mary. She was a great boss. She was maybe ahead of her time because, it's a 7-piece band, and they were all men, and the crew, all men on stage, in the band. So even by having a female in the band, she was breaking the mold, breaking the rules a little bit. So we did it, and I remember when we finished recording it, Joe, her husband, the record company, saying, this could sell 7,000 copies. I mean, that was kind of, a little project album. And I was going, that'd be so cool, And it was released, and people think it was a big hit straight away. It wasn't. It was a real slow burner. But very gradually, it just very slowly took over the airways. And meanwhile, I'd been signed to Geffen Records. I went off to Los Angeles to record the album, and my mother was ringing me saying, that song is getting played all the time on the radio. And I was going to ask my mother, she's heard it twice, like maybe, And, phone calls, you didn't make so many phone calls in those days. It cost a lot of money. So I came back from LA and I landed in Dublin Airport and it was playing. And I thought, wow, it was a coincidence. And I got into the taxi to get home and it was playing. And I got into my little bedsit where I had written it and I switched on the radio and it was playing. Now, I'd played on enough, as a session musician, on enough big songs to know that this was not your normal amount of airplay. This was something bigger. And I remember one night getting into bed in my little bedsit, lying in bed, and it was on the main street in Rathmines Road in Dublin. And I remember hearing the hen parties coming home from town, singing it, drunk. And I was in the room where I'd written it like a year earlier, So bizarre, yeah. I think Ireland, like when I tell my daughter, like when I was in college in Trinity, contraception was illegal. It wasn't just frowned upon, it was illegal in Ireland. You could be arrested for, buying condoms, or, you couldn't get the pill. There was no abortion in Ireland. There was no, it was illegal to be gay. There was no gay marriage. There was none of that at the time. And we forget how far we've come in Ireland, I think. But back then it was, my mother had to give up her job when she got married. She was in the civil service, and that was just the law. And she bitterly resented it, and I can understand why. So it was kind of a different era for women, and I think that was, I'd love to tell you that I was so politically aware and I was so smart and I was writing about that. I wasn't that smart. There was other people in the Woman's Heart Collective who were a lot more political and smarter than I was. Mary would have been smarter. I was just looking at it from an emotional perspective, thinking this feels wrong. I remember my brother being in a band, and the girls' job was to go and see them, not to be on stage with them, So, yeah, it was quite a revolutionary thing to have these 6 women come together and start touring, and it was a big deal at the time.
I think you're being very humble about that, because it really was absolutely revolutionary for teenage girls, as I was at that time, to be listening to an amazing female album like that. And I think you helped to shape and bring Ireland out of a very misogynistic and dark time in those days. I mean, it was a criminal offence to be gay until 1993. Right. Abortion has only become legal in the past 6-7 years, in Northern Ireland anyway, in Ireland a little bit before that. But I think, your music really helped to shape that female empowerment and feminism? I mean, would you see yourself perhaps doing something like that again now, and in these times when we might be questioning the state of the world with the Epstein files? I mean, is there space for another empowering album? Could that happen again?
Yeah, I mean, I never mean to write politically. I just can't help myself. You know, I get incensed about something. And sometimes subjects are a bit too dark for me to go to. And sometimes I can come to them then from another angle. I mean, you know, you're saying being humble, you're giving me too much credit. Like, there was this famous thing at the time when Mary Robinson was elected President of Ireland. There was a famous, iconic picture of her in the purple and all these men behind her. And everybody was saying, oh my God, and this was the big... I didn't notice. I mean, I hate saying that to a room of smart, intelligent journalists. Honestly, I didn't notice. That was just the way it was. That was the way it was. Now, I guess subliminally I was questioning it. Certainly in the music business, I was questioning it. Why are there no female drummers? Why are there no female sound engineers? Why are there no female producers? Like, what nobody knows is the track A Woman's Heart was produced by myself and Mary and my drummer. It doesn't appear on the credits, you know, anywhere. You know, on all the other tracks, you know, that it has produced by, you know, it just women didn't produce. That still happens. I was Dave Rotherray from the beautiful South. I produced some tracks for him, and we were in a studio, I remember, in Paris. And he introduced me to the engineer, and he said, this is Eleanor, she's the producer. And Dave sat in the back just to kind of be on his phone or do his thing, you know. The engineer kept turning back towards Dave and saying, what kind of drum sound do you want? And Dave every time went, Eleanor, what kind of drum song? You know, and he kept referring back to me, and the guy kept just... And in the end, he was doing something on the desk, and I said, please don't do that. And he put his hand up to me like this, okay? You see, this is the right reaction, okay? I'm ashamed to say I didn't notice. I kind of thought, oh, okay, and I was thinking in my head, okay, how will I get around this in the mix? And I was thinking, okay, I can get around it, you know. And we broke for lunch, and afterwards Dave said to me, oh my God. And I was thinking, what? And he said, what just happened in there? And I was going, what happened? And he said, he put his hand up to you. And I went, oh yeah, that. I'm so used to it. I mean, I was so used to it. Fair play to Dave, by the way, for noticing. Because, you know, if you were to fight it every time it happened, you'd never get out of, you know, you'd never get to lunchtime, you know. So I guess you try and pick your battles. You horrified at me now, Lynne. Have I got a whole lot of women judging me in the room? No, okay. Same experience, okay. But you can't fight it all the time. You just pick your battles, I think, yeah. Anyway.
Okay, I'd love to open it up to the audience before we carry on. Would anybody like to ask a question? I'll pick you if you're wearing green.
Ellen, thanks so much. It's been a terrific evening. So if your aim is to have people leave feeling uplifted from every gig that you do, well, we're certainly going to do that tonight for sure. I was going to ask the nosy question about South Ann Street as well. I wanted to hear the backstory, but we've gone through that. So I'll ask you, so your songs are very personal, the lyrics are very personal to you. So apart from Mary Black, how do you feel when you hear other people singing your songs? I mean, do you put so much of your own heart into it? How does that work for you when you hear other people doing cover versions of your songs?
I love it, mostly. And, you know, it's an honor, it's a privilege, and I do feel, you know, there's been a few versions I've gone, oh, sweet Jesus, what are you thinking? You know, or maybe they change the chords, or they kind of don't put the emphasis on the right thing. I mean, it's funny, because South Ann Street, there's a lot of guys are doing it, and they're changing the pronouns, and actually that's kind of cool. This is working for me. So I think sometimes as writers, we need to certainly I need to get over myself. I am terribly precious, but I can kind of get over myself. Most times when I'm hearing artists do my work, it's because I'm co-writing with them and they do a song I've co-written with them, and I love that. I love that because I can write to their voice. And I can write about, like, you know, if I'm writing with a girl band or something, you know, they're young and I want to get their energy, and I love it. And so that's mostly what happens. But yeah, there's that great song. Was it Melanie who did "Look What They've Done to My Song"? I love that song. So yeah, mostly it's great, but sometimes it's oh.
So hi, sorry, this may be a bit of a deeper question. But when you're writing your songs, do you ever, like, when you're talking about your religion or maybe like your religious background, do you ever take a more critical approach to it, or do you take a more reflective one looking back at it?
Sorry, repeat the end of the question when I'm writing about religion.
Is it more like critical, or is it more reflective on your religious background or upbringing?
Oh, it's such a good question. I mean, I've written so many songs about religion. They tended to be kind of angry at the time because I was so angry. I was angry at the hypocrisy. I was outraged. I was just so outraged at what they were telling people to do. And it was a real thing with the Catholic Church, but so many large institutions, large organized religions, so often the people at the top, you know, a friend of mine, her mum was very religious and she brought her to Rome to see the Vatican, and she noticed her mother had gone very quiet, and she said, "What's wrong?" And she said, she was looking up at the satellites outside the Vatican, and she said, "We're a long way from a stable in Bethlehem," you know. And I thought that was quite a profound line, which I've actually put into a song since. But yeah, yeah, there was a lot of anger certainly around for me. Actually, there's a song, I don't know if we time, have we? I wrote a song called Ave Maria, which kind of maybe, if you don't mind, maybe I'll, are you sure we've time? Okay, okay. I wrote this when, I'd see my mother who'd given up everything, and, you know, she didn't smoke, she didn't drink. When it came to Lent, there was nothing left for her to give up, you know, honestly. And then you see what they're doing, and you think towards the end of her life, oh my God, like, has my whole life been given over to this thing? So I call the song Ave Maria. Ave Maria, don't let her down. In your powder blue robe and your shiny gold crown, see, she's put all her trust in you, like she was brought up to do. So Ave Maria, don't let her down. You can't let her down. And Ave Maria, won't you be kind? 'Cause she's spoken those prayers each day of her life, and the suffering that she goes through, she offers it up to you. So Ave Maria, please be kind. Won't you be kind? Ave Maria, gratia plena. Ave Maria, if you're really there with your perfect white skin and your shiny brown hair, when she kneels amongst the crowd and sings the Ave out loud. Well, Ave Maria, don't you care? Don't you care? Ave Maria, gratia plena. Ave Maria. You know, it's funny, when you asked your question, I was singing it and I was thinking, God, I'm getting angry even now thinking about it. You know, because you look at what people are doing in the United States at the moment in the name of religion, you know, and you see this, like, you know, certainly in my church in Cabra, you know, Our Lady was this white face, and, you know, Our Lady wouldn't have had white skin. You know, it's not how she would have, you know, and it's this distorted, perfect picture of, and, you know, it's like, do you care? Like, if you have real decency and, you know, if you are truly religious and truly want to preach about that kind of thing, surely you'll be opening your doors. And the irony of using religion to shut your doors to people, and yeah, it kind of breaks my heart. Anyway.
Definitely from Northern Ireland, I can agree with you there. We have a question over here.
Can you talk us a bit through your songwriting process, you know, where the inspiration comes from and how long it takes you to write a song?
Okay, yeah. Sorry. I just realized I'm supposed to be using this microphone for speaking, sorry. Yeah, so every song is different, literally every song is different. Usually, if I'm on my own, blank sheet of paper, or my phone, I use my phone a lot. I mean, I do all, if I'm driving, for example, I'll phone myself and leave a message on my answering machine so that I don't forget the idea. And I'll kind of sing the phrase and say, oh, and don't forget to put this in, and this would be nice on trumpet, and I kind of do that kind of thing. I mean, for me, the nuggets of gold come at the bit before I wake up in the morning, or as I'm waking up, or as I'm going to sleep at night, or if I wake up in the middle of the night. They're the gold nuggets, I think. So I always have a notebook beside the bed, and I can write in the dark. It's not always very neat, but, you know, actually I'm single again now. I can switch on the bloody light if I want. But for years I had to write in the dark. Oh, don't forget that idea. And I think that those ideas that come are often the best ones. And then you can put in your hours in the daytime and put structure and form and, you know, think about the rhyme and the craft, because it's definitely a craft. I used to think you could teach songwriting, and I no longer do. I think you're either a writer or you're not, you know. I think you can teach the tricks of songwriting, or the craft. Like, I think you can, people always say to me, oh, song lyrics is like poetry, and you're journalists, right? You know, song lyrics are not poetry. Poetry has its own melody. It's got its own rhythm, its own music. It's wonderful. But, you know, lyrics shouldn't necessarily be spoken. Like, if I say she loves you, yeah, 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 she loves you, yeah, yeah, it sounds bloody stupid. But, you know, when I sing, she loves you, yeah, 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 all of a sudden it makes sense. And it's not just pop, you know. Rossini, if you sing, you know, Figaro, 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 it sounds bloody stupid, but Figaro, 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 it makes perfect sense. So I think what you're doing as what I'm doing certainly is I'm using the devices of poetry. I'm using alliteration and rhyme and repetition and soft rhyme and hard rhyme and, you know, assonance and dissonance and all those things. And I'm using those devices of poetry in a lyrical way. But melodies, yeah, I mean, I have melodies going around my head all the time. I mean, every time a phone signal goes off, I start adding harmonies to it. It drives me nuts. And it's actually tricky. My daughter spends her life going, stop singing, Mum, stop singing, because I hum all the time. And a little bit of me goes, people pay good money to hear me sing, you know. She's going, yes, but not all the time. yeah. But yeah, I mean, there's so many ways of doing it, but I love writing, and I go a bit doolally when I stop writing. And I do put the hours in at home as well, like just sitting at a table. Or the problem is when you write a song with a piece of paper is often I go to play it and I realize I can't play this, or I can't sing that really, you know. So I kind of have to learn the songs once I write them. But I love it; it's great. Do you write songs yourself? No? Okay, maybe you start.
Is there a song of yours that isn't as well known that you feel should be better known?
This is going to sound really arrogant. I don't mean to sound arrogant. I don't care. Is that terrible? Like when people heard that I'd written hundreds of songs and I'd never played them for anybody, they kind of gone, why are you doing this? And it's because the joy for me is in the writing. And of course I have to be solvent, and I need to sell enough albums, and I need you all to, you know, buy concert tickets and all that for me to make a living. But bizarrely, it's not why I'm doing it. I don't know whether I thought I was Emily Dickinson or something, and I was going to die at 35, and they'd find all these songs. But honestly, it's not why I'm doing them. I've songs that I know mean a lot to me, and then I've songs that mean a lot to other people. There's one song called Did You Tell Him? And, you know, amongst my daughter's age group, it's like the song that they love. And I wanted to use soft rhymes all the way through it, but there was one line that just said exactly what I needed to say, but it was a hard rhyme. I had sleepless nights about that. And I know I need to get out more. I know I do. But whenever they say, oh, I love that song of yours, Did You Tell Him? Did You Tell Him? And all I can think of is, I still kind of, could I not have come out with that better line, the deserve, and somebody having the nerve, and it's all I deserve. And, you know, it would have been okay to have been at the end of the song, but it's in the middle and it really gets to me. So yeah, no, I don't really have a song. I mean, I've a wide catalogue of songs, and some of them mean something to somebody and some of them don't. And the odd time you'll get one that means nothing to anybody, you think, and you'll get an odd message from somebody. I have a song about I don't know if there's anybody from Oslo here in the room, but anyway, there's a fantastic park there of Sculptor Park, Froglands Park. Oh yeah, you know it, okay. I wrote a song called Vigeland's Dream about that, and they sent me a lovely gift, the people in the park, to thank me for the song, because they've people travelling from Australia and stuff to see the park, and it's lovely, yeah. Tourist board at home did nothing for me. All the songs I've written about Ireland, haven't heard a peep out of them. But anyway, they sent a lovely gift to me, so yeah.
I love that you said you don't care.
Was your daughter inspiring or critical or difficult?
She's fantastic. She loves music, but she doesn't want to do. She actually says to me, "Mom, why do you want to do it in front of people?" She doesn't understand why you would want to do it in front of people, and I kind of understand what she means. But she's in a whole different thing. She's very musical, but she's no interest in doing it for a living. She did politics. No, I complete songs, but I would always want to play them for her, and I would always value her opinion. She's a very eclectic sense of music. She could be listening to Chopin one minute and Daft Punk the next. She's a really, really wide range of music. She's incredibly excited that I'm here tonight. And when she heard I was coming to the Foreign Correspondents Club in Hong Kong, because she's obsessed with John le Carré, and she said, "Mom, I don't believe you're going to the Foreign Correspondents Club. Take pictures and tell me what it was like." And so I'm going to be talking to her about it when I leave here. But yeah. You know, as a child, it's funny, sometimes I remember once she brought a friend of hers to one of I was playing this huge big festival, and she used to come on the road with me a lot, and to keep her happy, I used to bring some of her friends with her sometimes. And I looked into the side of the wings of the stage, and her friend was looking at me on stage, and my daughter was playing her Nintendo. I remember another day I was on a big show at home, the Late Late Show, and it's on quite late at night, and she was there, and she was at home, and she said to her dad, "I want to stay up and watch Mommy on the Late Late Show." And he said, "No, you don't. Get to bed." And she goes, "Okay." And she went into school the following Monday, and they all give their news, and every kid in the school said, like, you know, "We watched Sarah Jane's Mommy on the Late Late. We were allowed to stay up late on Friday to watch." And she was furious at me. Really furious. So yeah, it's funny.
She's the one that pointed out that most of your listeners are now male, is that?
Oh my God. So she did politics, philosophy, and economics in college. And then she did the thing in the London School of Economics on data analysis. And she said, I'm going to analyse your Spotify figures. Now, I didn't even know I had Spotify. But anyway, she came back and she said, Mum, you're always saying that your audience is predominantly female. And I said, yeah, I think so. I mean, I'd imagine it would be. And she goes, no, predominantly male, you know. And she had me change some of my merch. So I've got Gimme Some Wine corkscrews for sale. And right enough to I've sold more merch since I had that in my brain. So, yeah, so she's great.
Yes, where can we find your merch? You've some tonight and on a website?
No, I haven't got that together yet. I will get it together. I'm very bad at this, basically. But the South Ann Street tote bags, as the shoppers on South Ann Street carried on, and I've got some CDs, and I've got the Gimme Some Wine corkscrews, because you had to get Gimme Some Wine corkscrews. Actually, there's one other story. Can I tell you about my daughter? Because this is the best moment of my career. The teacher in her school, when she was 7 or 8, asked me to go into her school to play, to show them a guitar and stuff. So she was kind of, what? You're coming into my school? And I said, yes, love. The teacher asked me to. And she was, okay, well, Mum, they're not going to know any of your songs, Mum. And I was going, that's okay. And she goes, seriously, you're coming into my school? And I was, yes. And she said, okay, well, they're not going to be singing or clapping along or doing any of that, Mum. Okay. So I dropped her off at the school gates, and I was to come back in at noon. So I went home and I Googled what's number 1 in Ireland, and it was something really misogynistic and dreadful. And what's number 2 in Ireland, and it was something really misogynistic and dreadful. But anyway, somewhere in the top 10 was a song by Jessie J called Price Tag, which is all about, you know, what you give to society, and it's not about the price of something, and, you know. So I go into her school, and the whole school are there, and all the teachers and some of the parents have words, so they're there, and all the kids are there, so I'm showing them the guitar, and they say, sing something. So I go into Jessie J Price Tag, and the whole school is there going, it's not about the money, money, money. We don't need your money, money, money. Except for one little girl in the front row who's like, best moment in my career so far.
Any questions?
Eleanor, I'm not sure how to say this, but I'm sure I've heard your music, but I've never heard of you before in my life. So I'm very sorry about that. But I just want to say it's been a delightful evening. I just want to say thank you very much.
That's very kind of you. Thank you so much.
Everyone in Ireland has heard it. But you're here in Hong Kong this week. Can you tell us what you're actually doing in Hong Kong? You're doing workshops. Tell us a little bit about your impressions of Hong Kong. It's been a while since you've been here.
I have to say I love it. Few things kind of, you know, leap out. It's incredibly safe here. I mean, I travel for a living a lot of the time on my own in foreign cities, and I'm pretty streetwise and pretty cool with most areas, but I'm kind of shocked at, like, I nearly want to tap people on the shoulder and go, sorry, your phone is sticking out of your pocket there. You know, if we're going to the subway, everybody's so lax. I went to, you know, when I went to do the ocarina thing, I had the guitar in the car, and I said to Yip, can you leave the guitar in the car? And he said, oh, yes. And I said, you're sure you've locked it? And he said, yes, but even if you hadn't locked it, it would still be okay. So sad to say, my hometown of Dublin is, you know, you wouldn't be doing that in Dublin for sure. So the safety, your public transport is knocked my socks off. I've been on your trams, I've been on your buses, I've been on your undergrounds, I've been on your motorboats, the Star Ferry, I've been on the junk, I went in a junk, that was so cool. Yeah, so absolutely loved it. Fascinated by Cantonese, I can't pick it up at all. The thing of the intonation being so important is so interesting to me as a songwriter, because I'm thinking, surely Cantonese lyrics, you can't use the intonation because you're using the melody. So this must be so hard. It must depend on the context so much. So I think I'd have fun as a Cantonese songwriter playing with that maybe.
You have to come back and do that at the FCC.
Well, another time, yeah.
And I have to say thank you to Mark, actually, who's been amazing. He has been organising your schedule all week, so thank you, Mark.
Thank you, Mark. Yeah.
And to you for coming. So any other questions before we leave with a spectacular finale, which you might have heard of? Oh, one more song.
One more song, okay. Well, I'll do Woman's Heart. Yeah.
I think you have to.
Just give me a moment to retune. Oh yeah, the concert on Friday. So there's some Irish here, right? Yeah, so you will know, some of you will know this maybe? Yeah, okay. Every word, okay. Okay, well maybe we hear you. Button is hitting off the guitar, sorry. My heart is low, my heart is so low. As only a woman's heart can be. As only a woman's, as only a woman's, as only a woman's heart can know. The tears that drip from my bewildered eyes taste of bittersweet romance. You're still in my hopes, you're still on my mind, yeah. And even though I manage on my own, my heart is low, my heart is so low. As only a woman's heart can be. As only a woman's, as only a woman's, as only a woman's heart can know. When restless eyes reveal my troubled soul, memories flood my weary heart. I mourn for my dreams, I mourn for my wasted love. And while I know that I'll survive alone, sing it with me. My heart is low, my heart is so low. As only a woman's heart can be. As only a woman's, as only a woman's, as only a woman's heart can know. It's gorgeous. Let me hear you on your own. Just keep it going. I'm going to do a harmony, okay? My heart is so low. It's only a woman's heart can be. It's only a woman's. Only a woman's. It's only a woman's heart can be. Amazing. One last time. woman's heart can know. Thank you.
Absolutely beautiful. I was terrified of singing into the microphone there because I cannot sing, cannot sing a note. Eleanor, it's been absolutely fantastic. If anybody does want to hear more of her music, she is playing at the Methodist Church in Wanchai on Friday evening. What time, Mark?
Starts at 8 o'clock.
8 o'clock?
Yep, and it's going to continue.
Okay, fantastic. And then we invite you to come back to the FCC, which is very famous on a Friday night for drinks. And so we are here in the FCC. You don't have to be a journalist to join. If anybody is not a member and would like to join, please feel free. And Eleanor, we always give a gift to our guests. Normally, it can be a tie. I think this is not a tie, so I don't know what it is. An FCC mug and a tote bag. So.
I can see my daughter rubbing this. I'm going to have to hold on to it tightly.
Thank you very much. A round of applause for Eleanor for this.